Hi everybody, Mrs. Mazzola here, ready for another math lesson. This week we're focusing on angles again. And before we do that, we're going to start with a math joke as always. This math joke, just like our focus, is on angles. So thinking back to the types of angles that we did last week will help you understand this joke. Here we go. So, why are obtuse angles always so depressed? Why are they always so sad? Because they're never right. Oh, they're never right. That would make me sad all the time. No wonder they're depressed. Anyway, let's get to the math. All right, everybody. So we are doing a lesson on angles today, and we are measuring angles. So last week we talked about the different types of angles, and today we're going to talk about measuring them using those protractors that came home with you today. So the first thing we need to look at on our protractor are these numbers that we see across the top. So if you look and see, up at the top, there is numbers that go from 0 to 180, and on the inside, there are also numbers that go from 0 to 180. So those numbers help us to understand what the measurement of our angle is, depending on which direction it's facing. So we'll get more into that in just a second. The other thing we need to talk about is what we call these angles, because you're going to see them a little bit differently this week. We won't just have rays coming out from each other. So we have a vocab term that we might want to add into our math notebook. So if you haven't grabbed those, or if you want to add this, you can pause the video, go grab that, or pause for a second as we write this down. So the vocab word we want today is called angle notation. And this is just a fancy way to say angle name. But there's a specific way that we do this. We don't give a name called Fred. You know, this isn't angle Fred. So what we do is we rewrite it a little bit differently. So angles usually have letters in them. They usually have that point in the middle. They'll have our rays coming out from them, and you'll see extra points added onto them, and there'll be letters attached to it now. So there might be an A, B, and a C, okay? And if we were talking about this angle right here, we would write it or name it as angle ABC. And what we do with that is we're kind of connecting the dots. We're connecting A to B to C to make that angle. You don't want to do it the other direction. Usually you read it from top to bottom on the angle, depending on how they want to write it. So you have to pay attention sometimes to how it's written. And the way we write our angle numbers that are special looks like this. You do the angle symbol. Sometimes there's a little circle inside here, sometimes there's not. And then you have A, B, C. That's like having the name Fred written in our normal names. But for angles, we would just write it as A, B, C, because those are the connecting points to our angle, okay? So when we're talking about angles and it asks you for the measurement of angle ABC, and if I had a number, say 67, written in here like this, that means that the measurement of angle ABC is equal to 67 degrees. I would read it that way. Angle ABC is 67 degrees, okay? And that other thing to point out is this little symbol that I just drew right here, okay? That is a degrees symbol. And you guys have probably seen that when we've talked about temperature, but we also use it for angles too, because it's the degrees of how far it's opening. All right, so now that we've got that idea about angle notations or angle names, we'll know how to read these angles that we're about to look at and the answers it's asking us for. So let's take a look at our first angle to measure. All right, if we look at our protractor, we've got an angle that is DEF. And if we were to connect those dots, we would get an angle that looks like that. And we can see that with those black lines in our protractor. And it's opening up this way. So there are a couple different ways, some different tricks that I use to be able to kind of tell how wide my angle is, because when you're doing measurements of angles, you have to know how big it is, okay? That measurement inside of our angle. And I might be thinking, well, this angle might be all of this space out here. But it might also be in here. there's lines that are cutting up my protractor and I just don't know which one it is. So what I have to think about is the direction of those angles. And I like to think of it like a mouth, you know, like an alligator's mouth that's eating something. And I want to know how much it's eating. How many degrees does it like to eat? Okay, so if I look at my angle again, it's going like this. And that is my mouth. That angle is my mouth. So I sometimes will take a little second and I might draw some eyeballs onto my angle monster, give him some teeth so I know where he's eating. And if I look where I just drew those eyeballs and the teeth, he's eating all this stuff right here. That's where his mouth is. So that is what he's eaten degrees. So what I have to do is I have to measure what's inside of here. And to be able to do that, I have to pick the right numbers. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a hint here. When you're doing angle measurements, if there's a little mouth to your monster, you want to use the little numbers to get your angle measurement, okay? So if I look inside my protractor in this space that I've got two different sets of numbers that we were talking about before. I've got numbers out here that are 170, 160, 150. Then if I look on the inside, I've got 10, 20, 30. If I've got a little mouth, I want to use the little numbers to help me figure out what degrees or how much he's eaten. So which do you think are the little numbers? Is it 170, 160, 150? Or is it 10, 20, 30? What do you think? You're right. It's the inside numbers on this one. Those are my little numbers. That's the trick that I can use to help me know what my degrees are. So if I were going to write the measurement of angle, see we're doing our angle name, angle DEF, I would write that the measurement of that angle is 30 degrees because that line goes right here, right through that number 30, okay? So now let's take a look at a different one. If we look at this angle, we can already give it an angle name. So we can connect those dots. We've got L, M, and N, and we like to go from top to bottom. So if we connect those dots, we've got L, M, N. So we're going to add that to our angle name. Angle, L, M, N. Ooh, that's kind of sloppy. Let's try that again. Let's do a little better, Mrs. Mazzola. L, M, N. Very good. There we go. Okay, so just like up here, when we were talking about little mouths, use the little numbers. I bet you can figure out the trick when they're like this. I still might draw my monster to help me see. I'm going to put his eyeballs out here, and I'll draw his teeth. And it looks like he's got a really big open mouth. So if you think about that, if you've got a really big open mouth, you're probably going to be able to eat a lot, right? So the hint with big angles, big open angles that are past, and the hint, here's the little bit of a tricky part. If they're past this 90 degrees, okay? That's what bigger means. So if it's bigger, if it's a big mouthed monster, you want to use the big numbers to be able to determine the measurement of that angle. So let's take a look at the options that we have here. We've got on this line, we've got an option for 60 and we've got an option for 130. Which one do you think is the big number out of those two? If you said 130, you are correct. So for this angle, LMN, our measurement, the degrees that this hungry monster is eating, goes from 0 up to 130 degrees, okay? Now let me remind you here, if I'm ever going too fast, feel free to pause or go back and look at those examples again. And it's okay to do that. You might even pause to go do part of your assignment when you've seen this part of the video to help you with those problems. So feel free to pause or go backwards at any time that you need to, okay? Take any notes that you want to too. All right, so now that we've looked at those two and gotten our hints for little mouths and big mouths, let's take a look at some new ones. The other thing that you might run into is they flip sides. Monsters don't always eat one direction. What happens if the food they want to eat is coming from the other direction? So angles are the same way, and that's why on our protractors, those numbers go both directions. Not only does that help us with little and big mouths, but it also helps us when our mouths flip sides. okay? So some of you might be looking at this one going, wait, Mrs. Mazzola, but now it's not even pointing at a number anymore. That's okay. There's a hint and a trick for this one too. So first, we need to realize something. We need to draw our monster and realize that our monster has flipped directions. Now his mouth is starting over here instead of going the other direction. So I need to put my eyeballs on the other side of his mouth on the outside. So I'm going to draw my eyeballs to help me out. I'll give him his teeth. And now I know that he's eating this part right in here. That's what's inside of his mouth. Okay, so if I look at it, if 90 is my halfway point between big and little, what do we think? Does that look, so if it's 90 degrees, if it's like this, do we think that's littler or bigger than 90 degrees? What do you think? You're right. This one would be littler. So I've got a little mouth. So I want the little numbers. Okay. Now you might be thinking, but wait, Ms. Mazzola, I know that it's the little numbers, but it's not pointing to any one of them anymore. That's okay. We still can figure out what this measurement is. So we know that we want the little numbers. So first we got to decide, do we want 100 and 110? Or do we want 70 and 90? We want 70 and 90. You're right. Those are the littler numbers. Now, if I take a look at where these numbers are falling, this is just like a number line. Protractors are just like number lines. You can see all the tiny little tick marks in there, just like we would on a ruler or a number line, and these are the same. So if you look, I bet you could tell, oh, that's halfway between 70 and 80, okay? Because if I'm counting up, just like on my number line, here's 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. If I'm counting up on my number line, because he's opening his mouth, where am I if I'm halfway between 70 and 80? If you said 75, you are correct. So the measurement of this angle, and we'll go ahead and give it some letters because they didn't go ahead and do this. We'll say MZF, just to be weird. Okay, so angle MZF was how many degrees again? Oh yeah, that's right. 75 degrees. Okay. All right, now let's see if you can do this next one without my help. I'm going to give you a second to look at it and see if you can get your answer right before I start going over the answers. All right, here we go. Let's take a look at that monster. Try not to get tricked. I'll give you a second. All right, and I'm also going to give this monster a name with some letters. Let's do angles, or let's do number, what do we want to do? Let's do that. That'll be fun. Okay. So now let's take a look at our monster. His mouth starts here. Other part of his mouth is here. Means he's going to eat inside here. I want to put his eyeballs. Oops, wrong color. Let's try that again. Eyeballs on the outside of my angle. Give him some teeth. Okay, I want to find out where he's eating. And that is a very big mouth. So I want the big numbers. Okay, so if I look at my number options that I've got here, I've got 40 and 30, 140 and 150. Which ones do you think are the big ones? Bet you've already figured it out at this point. Yes, I want to use the 140 and 150. I'm using my number line coming all the way out here, so I'm between 140 and 150. It's not going to be 155 because I'm not coming from this direction. That would be not the right way. Even if I was doing that, it still wouldn't be 155 because I'd go 180, 170, 160, 150, and I'd still be less than 155. So it'd be less than 150, so it couldn't be that. So it's between 140 and 150, and it's halfway in between. So if we want to do our angle, and we want to write the measurement of it, we've got angle BAT, reading left to right. Sometimes it's left to right when it's like this instead of top to bottom. It depends on how they do it. They may have even written it in your assignment. They may even do TAB. Depends on what they meant. Doesn't matter. You're still going to go like this to connect those dots, okay? Either way, the measurements for both of those going up or down is going to be the same measurement. And I bet you figured it out. Halfway between 140 and 150 is 145 degrees, okay? Nice job. I bet you got that one right. Last thing we need to look at is when you're asked to draw an angle for yourself. So this is where you have to be super careful about that monster's mouth. You have to make sure that you're paying attention to which direction his mouth is starting out. If his mouth is starting out going this way, you want to make sure that your angle is going to open up going that way, just like in the examples that we saw at the top. But if his mouth is starting going this way, your angle is going to need to open up this way. Okay? If you put an angle out this way, it's not going to work that very nicely. Okay? So let's try one as an example. If we are asked to create an angle that is 60 degrees, ooh, that's really thick. Let's try that again. We want one that is 60 degrees. I've been asked to do a 60-degree angle, and they have started it going this direction. And usually it would be a straight line. This one's just an example. You're like, but wait, Mrs. Mazzola, I don't know which one is 60. I don't know how to make 60. Well, this is where your numbers come in. It's just like a number line. Remember that monster is opening his mouth to be able to take in enough of the degrees. So I have to look at my numbers. And if I look right here, I've got an option of 10 and 170. If I'm starting on a number line with my mouth closed and starting to eat, am I going to start with 170? No. You are very correct. I'm going to start with 0 and probably go up to 10 if I'm going to count correctly and we're not in some weird cycle world. So I'm going to go next to 10, then 20. I'm using that inside arc, if you notice, to find my measurement. You might go, oh, wait, I get it. If I'm counting 10, 20, 30, I can just jump straight to 60. And you would be exactly right. If we jump straight to 60, what we can do to help us draw this is I like to put a point there to connect my rays to help me make that mouth. I'm going to put a point right on 60. And then if I wanted to be absolutely exact, and if I had a picky teacher like, oh, Miss Mazzola maybe, that asked me to use a straight edge, I might take the piece of my side of my paper or a ruler and connect these dots straight and make them nice. For me, it doesn't work quite that way on the computer, but we'll try our best. So now the last thing I have to do to make this 60-degree angle is connect the dots. So I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to pick that top dot that I just made on 60, connect it down to my middle point. My bottom mouthpiece is already there. I'm going to draw my arrows. And now, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? You just drew a 60-degree angle. Ah, yeah. Nice job. Very good. Okay, challenge time. What happens when I ask you to draw a 105-degree angle? I can't do it, Miss Mazzola. It's impossible. Yes, you can. All right. Our monster's mouth is going to go this way this time, though. Okay. So now we know that his mouth needs to open up going that way because his mouth has started right here. And just like we did before, we don't want to count from 0 to 170. That doesn't work. We want to go from 0 to 10 to 20 in normal counting. So I'm going to go 0, 10, 20, 30, 40. If you notice, I'm counting on the outside this time. Okay, so this time I want to go all the way to 105. And where do you think I might find that? You are exactly right. I am going to be halfway between 100 and 110. I'm going to go ahead and put my dot there. 105 is right here. And then I connect my dots. Add my arrows to finish my rays. And poof! 105 degrees. I might want to put my little arc in there. I forgot to put on my other one up there. And you have just drawn a 105-degree angle, ladies and gentlemen. Look at you, fantastic mathematicians. So don't forget when you're doing your assignment, little mouth, little numbers. Big mouth, big numbers. And always pay attention to your counting. Don't go from 0 to 170. Make sure that you're counting correctly. All right? Good luck. And call me or message me if you have any questions. Bye.